Strange Destinations, the show where innovators share the tales of the accidents, the inspirations and the connections which led them to create their own unique paths. I'm your host, Dan O'Grady, co-founder of Simpatico, and this show is brought to you by Silicon Beach Radio. Now a quick word from our sponsors.
Silicon Beach Radio, proudly sponsored by Allied Legal, legal advisors to innovative businesses. MYOB, business software that sets you up for success. Victory Offices, flexible workspace solutions, premium serviced offices, co-working, lounge space, virtual office and meeting spaces.
Welcome to Strange Destinations. Our guest this week is Lily Dempster, the CEO and founder of the Neighbourhood Effect. Welcome, Lily.
Hi, thanks, Dan. Thanks for having me.
How are things today?
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Just, it's a typical work day, lots of different things happening.
Yeah. So if you had to give it a rating out of 10, where would it stand?
Probably about a 6 or a 7.
Okay. Room for improvement.
Yeah. I think still, in startup world, I think that's a good day. Some things working well, a couple of things sort of nutting through.
Yeah. So a standard kind of day, if there is such a thing.
Sorry, a bit boring. So pretty standard.
Is there a standard day in startup world?
No. So contradict myself, not really. I guess that you identify like patterns in like what's a normal level of stress, that you cope with, and what's a normal level of number of tasks that you've got to kind of reasonably work through in a given time period.
Mm-hmm. So are they your kind of the two main things you track, stress and tasks? And
it depends. If it, just on a personal level, I think I try to keep track of how stressed I'm feeling and how tired I am, just because if I'm feeling overly stressed or overly tired, then my productivity dips.
Yeah.
So I try and keep an eye on that. And certainly, I have a task list every week and every day that I try to work through. Sometimes it's bigger than on other days. And yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, that's actually a really important thing, dealing with stress. Everybody deals with it, but particularly in startups when it's all down to you as the founder. What do you find are the effective methods for you that alleviate or manage stress?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to present myself as an expert. I think that it's been a really steep learning curve for me. I think a lot of people who end up running companies sort of are quite conscientious and start with like a quite a high level of anxiety anyway. So for me, it's been just building a sort of sense of self-awareness about how I'm going emotionally that I think I've had to kind of learn about over time. And certainly meditating is probably, if you could call anything a silver bullet, that would be the thing for me that really, really helps. Yeah, I'm trying to do that about 10 minutes every day. Started at the start of this year around February. Yeah, I've
found for myself the same thing. Meditation can make a big difference just to alleviate overall stress levels, or at least combating it when it does inevitably arise.
Yeah, and actually one other thing that I'm really interested in, like in a sort of silly way, in optimization and productivity, and how do you do it in a way that's sustainable over time. There's quite a culture in startup world, particularly coming from the US, about you just work extremely hard and work as many hours as you could fit into a week. And your one advantage as a small startup against bigger players is your speed. So you kind of have to put everything into it at the start. And I think for a business like mine, where, we're trying to have an environmental impact as well as being financially sustainable, I don't necessarily just want to adopt that model wholesale. And I want to try and be quite intentional about how I work and make sure that I'm crafting a culture that works for staff we bring on ultimately as well. For me, it's really important that I've got systems for managing my stress. I'm not overworking, and that I'm actually getting as much as I can out of each day in terms of value creation and kind of working through a cognitive load. Knowledge work's so different from kind of mechanistic labor I don't know even necessarily that an 8-hour workday is the best way to optimize your output if you're working on really gnarly problems that require a lot of your brain power.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think it's stretching the potential of your productivity to think that you can go for 8 hours if you're really thinking hard, problem solving, doing that kind of mental cognitive work ongoing. You really need breaks, or at least ways to change it up.
Yeah, and one thing I'm trying at the moment on that is this is a bit embarrassing to admit, but I'm using like a validation journal where I'll literally at the end of the day spend 5 minutes and go, what am I proud of today that I did? And it's been great for benchmarking. I actually did quite a bit of work today. Sometimes you can be doing a lot and not feel like you're moving as quickly as you'd like. So
yeah, and yeah, it's often only upon reflection where you can get a gauge of how the day, how the week, how the month's been, particularly when you're in your head a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So can you share a bit about the neighbourhood effect and how that came to be?
Yeah, sure. So the short answer is I worked in environmental campaigning for some time, and I was running consumer campaigns for a national advocacy group, getting people to switch to low carbon products online. So energy sector stuff, and running those campaigns, I got our team to run the numbers on what the actual carbon emission reductions were for switching to a carbon neutral electricity retailer, and then another campaign getting people to purchase renewable energy to offset their electricity consumption. And both of those campaigns had quite rapid and tangible impacts in terms of carbon emission reductions. And one of the campaigns, we had 4,000 people participate in 4 months. And that campaign had double the impact of a community solar farm I'd worked on that took sort of 5-6 years to get off the ground. And, just because we have such high energy consumption per person in Australia, and we create a lot of waste and we do a lot of shopping. And so, when you combine the actions of a couple of thousand of us and make small changes to what we're doing, you can actually have a really rapid impact. So that was where I kind of went, oh, there's a gap here in the environmental movement on, if we can get people to change their behavior and do that in a way that's systematic and rewarding for them and make it relevant for them, and we could have a pretty significant impact and quite quickly. So I just saw it as a sort of utilitarian thing. Oh, this isn't being looked at in a way that's as systematic as I think it could be, and maybe that's my role for the next couple of years.
Mm-hmm. So was it seeing that the previous role was more just, here's a campaign, let's run it, that's the outcome, move on, run the next one, as opposed to exploring the outcomes and how they can be implemented long term?
The organisation I was working for is Get Up. They do fantastic they're very, very good at electoral campaigning. They're also, working with a bunch of people that identify very clearly as progressive and on the left. And so I wanted to work on this kind of idea of wide scale changes in consumer behaviour, in an organisation that wasn't just catering to people based on their political ideologies and party or group they identify with. I wanted it to be broader. And I also wanted to use behavioural science in the user interface that we built. There's all this amazing emerging research from behavioural economics and plenty that's been around for a long time in applied psychology on how you make it easier for people to change their habits when they want to. And I wanted to take some of that research and test it out in a digital platform. Mm-hmm. Looking at how do we get people to reduce their waste, reduce their energy, switch to a low carbon diet, switch to products that aren't just sort of first-hand products, and reducing the amount of stuff going to landfill. There's so many different things we could get people to do, and there's lots of people who are really motivated in Australia to do it. It's just about making it easy and relevant to them.
Mm-hmm. And what was the progression for you going from having that idea, seeing that what your previous role or the problems that your previous role was helping you to identify, to starting to implement your set of solutions?
It took me a while. I went enrolled in a master's at ANU called Master of Energy Change, and it was sort of looking at a mishmash of, renewable energy technology engineering, climate change policies, environmental sustainability. And I ran a project that year when I was doing the master's with a community group, sort of testing out some assumptions about if we could run like workshops and use some of these nudge theories and workshops, would that work? And just sort of realize it really needed to be in a digital format to have the reach that we wanted it to, and to reduce some of the friction that people typically experience when they're trying to change their behaviour to be more sustainable.
Yeah. And what have you identified as the primary thing that gets in people's way of changing their behaviour, even though they know that they should, or they feel that they want to?
I guess a big thing is just human beings typically follow the path of least resistance. It's a universal kind of norm. We'll do the things that we're already doing. We'll do the default option. People are really overloaded cognitively with just trying to stay on top of their own lives and their work, and if they've got families and they've got bills to pay, and they're trying to keep abreast of their own health and take care of everybody and still be a good person. So adding on top of that, guilt around your environmental impact, it can just seem like too much. So it's about, I think the thing that I identified through some of our user research and the testing we've done on the existing product that we've launched, the biggest thing is providing people with options that are actually immediately obviously going to benefit them, that they can fit into their existing lives in a way that suits them, not just guilt tripping people and insisting that they do something. You've got to make it easier for them, and there's a pathway to do that.
Yeah. I guess, in that way, we're all just like little kids. It's much easier just to kind of help move them in the direction they're going and guide them along, as opposed to try to get them to turn around, head back the other direction if they're not really wanting to change that way.
Yeah, I wouldn't say like little kids. I mean, it's in a sense we're targeting people who care about the environment and are worried about climate change. And we're trying to be very transparent about the strategies we're using. It's an analogous kind of system would be, there's a lot of health and wellness apps out there, lifestyle apps that are sort of helping people using behavioural science to help people change their diet and exercise. We're sort of trying to do the same thing with pro-environmental behaviours.
Okay, that makes more sense. So my analogy was bad.
No, it's okay. I just don't want to be. I don't want to be condescending to everybody. No, everybody has the same sort of issues that they struggle with. So.
I wasn't trying to be condescending. I just meant fundamentally we all have these behaviours where we just tend to go where we go.
Yeah. Kids and adults alike.
Yeah. And for yourself as a kid, what were you interested in as a kid? What were the things that kind of fascinated you when you were young?
Oh boy. What was I into as a kid? I really liked drama. I was a big drama kid, and then in early high school I was into lots and lots of different sports. I think I had a lot of energy. So I played like hockey and lacrosse and rowing, water polo at one stage, and then earlier on I loved books. I just sort of read voraciously when I was a little girl. Sort of still do, but more non-fiction now. Yeah.
Right. And in terms of drama, were you just like a kind of extroverted, dramatic child, or you wanted to be in productions, or what were your?
I used to do like home video. We had a camcorder my dad brought home, so my brother and I used to do sort of parody videos. I don't know whether this is connected to what I'm doing now in any way, but that's something I spent quite a bit of time on, just doing sort of skits and sort of satirical stuff. If you can call the stuff that a 10-year-old makes with her brother satirical.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, I liked making stuff, and then acting and improv as well.
Yeah. And is that kind of acting and improv something that comes into play, you find, in a startup?
I think one area where it's helped is in pitching. So I kind of see there's quite a big emphasis on pitching in the startup community and in the investment community. Being able to sort of articulately and compellingly express a vision for your organisation when you don't really have much to show for it when you just started.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to sell the vision of your organisation is really important. Being able to be comfortable speaking in front of a wide range of different audiences. I think probably training in acting and performance and drama would have helped with that, because you get more comfortable talking in front of a crowd.
Yeah. And what about, I guess, the kind of more collaborative part of drama as well? Has that helped you in terms of putting together a team and just having to kind of deal with different people at different levels?
I didn't do drama in uni, and so I wouldn't say that I can't kind of see a connection between the kind of collaborative role-playing fun stuff I did when I was sort of between the ages of 7 and 15, 16 to now when I'm 30. I'd like to say that it's had an impact and it's improved things, but I don't know that it has. I found building a team probably one of the trickiest things, mainly because I was Canberra based initially and I've just moved to Melbourne a few months ago, and that's made things much easier because we're a tech enabled company. My background's not in development. There's a lot more people who are interested in sustainability with a development background in Melbourne and Sydney than there were in Canberra.
Yeah, so it's been easier to connect with like-minded people.
Yeah, and just expanding my networks in the sort of professions that I really wanted to I needed to recruit a UX designer and a full stack developer, and there's a lot more of them in Sydney and Melbourne who want to work in a startup than in Canberra.
Yeah, and through that process of, I guess, recruiting and finding the right people for your team, what do you actually look for beyond just qualifications and their experience in that particular skill set that needs to be filled?
Yeah, so this is again like a learning curve for me. I managed a small team of people before in previous job, but I wouldn't say that I have a huge amount of management experience. So I'm really cognizant of my lack of experience in the area, and read a lot, talked to a lot of people. What I think is most important at such an early stage is actually mindset. Are people okay to just jump in, get things done in a way that doesn't cost a lot of money, where you can test your assumptions really quickly? Are they happy to kind of get in and get their hands dirty and do things in a lean and scrappy way initially? And depending on people's professional background, if you spend a lot of time working in the NGO sector or big companies or in government, the pace is really different, and it's a really different kind of way of operating where you sort of do everything yourself. You go from the big picture 5-year strategy, pitch to the investors, down to like, I'm going to clean the toilet today, an equivalent sort of job, so that ability to be quite versatile in big picture thinking and down to the nitty gritty detail and being able to execute and do it in a cost effective way.
Yeah. So through that, what's the most unusual thing you've found yourself doing to move the business forward? That kind of situation where you just go, I can't believe I'm actually doing this.
Yeah, I guess we did a crowdfunding campaign last year, and I made the mistake of saying I would write like thank you notes to every single person that donated, and like handwritten. And I was like, why did I think that was a good idea? And we had like all of these different gifts we were sending out to donors. So right before I went to the US in this accelerator, like the morning of, I got up at like 5 a.m. and was just like smashing out these thank you notes. Because, it's a good example of like, is that an effective way to spend my time? Talking about a learning curve. So I probably don't want that to ever be public. I wish I had said that. But yeah.
The main thing is you followed through on your promise, and that says a lot.
Yeah, that's true.
And moving forward, what's the kind of next big challenge that you see ahead?
But I think for us, it's working on the quality of our product and making sure that we've got the systems in place to be able to make data-driven decisions. Again, my background, environmental campaigning, consulting, law, I don't have a development background. I don't have a data science background. And getting to the point where I actually feel like I properly understand lean product development. And, we've been going through a pretty intensive prototyping and now user testing kind of cycle over the last few months. and that'll determine our product roadmap over the next 6 to 12 months. And I'm really pleased to be doing that process in a way that I think is really rigorous.
Yeah.
The type of product we're trying to build is very ambitious. We need to make sure that we've got systems set up to be able to run experiments and continually improve on what we've got. So my focus, in the first half of this year has been recruiting people into the team who can help me do that, and then making sure that we're actually prioritizing that over everything else, really.
Yeah. Busy times ahead.
Yeah. It's been fun though. I feel lucky, to be able to do this. I mean, there's a huge amount of autonomy, at least right now. We haven't done a seed round yet. So there's a lot of autonomy, and I like being able to set the strategic direction of the business, and there's a lot of pressure in that, but it's also pretty self-directed. So enjoy that aspect of the job.
Well, you're an interesting period for your venture. So looking forward to seeing how it develops from here.
Yeah, aren't we all? Me particularly.
Excellent. Well, I know you're busy, so thanks so much for coming on the show, Lily. And if people want to get in touch and follow you, reach out to you, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
Yeah, well, you can take a look at our existing web platform, neighbourhoodeffect.com.au. And if you're really excited by what we're doing, you can also get in touch with us at info@neighbourhoodeffect.com.au.
Perfect. Well, I'll put those links in the show notes as well. So been great chatting with you, Lily. All the best in the future. Any parting words of wisdom on saving the world for everyone out there?
I think maybe just pick something that you think that play to your strengths, where you can make a small difference. It's not something that's already being done by lots and lots of different people. Like utilitarian principles, very helpful for me at least. Figuring out what's going to be the most useful way for me to spend my time.
Great. Well, thanks, Lily. Thanks everyone for listening to this week's Strange Destinations. I'm your host, Dan O'Grady, and this show's brought to you by Silicon Beach Radio and Simpatico. Cheers.